Before the wedding, my fiancée went on a 5-day trip with a close male friend because she thought I wouldn't dare leave her. My name is Jason Rivera, and I never thought the woman I was ready to marry would test my loyalty by crossing every boundary of respect. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Ethan's Way. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. Everything was in place for the wedding of our dreams. Venue locked in, guest list finalized. My mom had even cried when Ava showed her the custom invitations. I thought I had found the one. Ava wasn't just beautiful, she was bold, smart, the kind of woman who walked into a room and pulled every eye without even trying. We'd been together 4 years, and I'd been planning the proposal for 6 months before I finally asked her. She'd said yes with that dazzling smile and jumped into my arms like something out of a movie. But that movie didn't end the way I thought it would. It started unraveling exactly 3 weeks before the wedding. I still remember the moment because it felt like the earth shifted slightly, not violently, just enough to make me feel unbalanced. We were sitting in our living room, her legs stretched across my lap, both of us scrolling our phones, chatting about the schedule for the next few days. And then she said it like it was nothing. "Oh, by the way, I'm going on a short trip with Leo, just 5 days. He's got a beach house out in Santa Cruz. Last little getaway before everything gets crazy with the wedding." I looked up thinking I had misheard. "You're going on a trip with Leo." She didn't even glance up. "Yeah, don't make it weird. He's my best friend. You know that." Leo, her best friend, the one she used to date back in college. The one who still came to our apartment for dinners, who hugged her just a little too long, who called her princess as a joke, but never said it around me. I never said much about Leo. Ava had always insisted it was innocent, that I was being old-fashioned, controlling, jealous. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but a 5-day trip to a beach house alone with him, something inside me stirred, not rage, not panic, just a cold, gnawing sense of being disrespected. Why not take the trip after the wedding? We could even go together. She finally looked up, smiling like she was speaking to a child. "Babe, don't start. I need this. I've been so stressed. It's not a big deal." I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her, waiting for some kind of recognition, a flicker of awareness, that this wasn't just a casual plan, that this hurt me. Instead, she said the one thing I didn't expect. "You're not gonna freak out and call off the wedding over a little trip, are you?" She was testing me. She knew it would hurt, and she counted on me staying silent. That was the first night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed while she drifted off next to me, her back turned. My mind was a storm. Was I overreacting? Was I being controlling? Or was this the clearest sign I'd ever seen? I thought about our relationship, all the little moments where she pushed boundaries just to see how much I'd tolerate. The way she'd flirt with guys at parties and laugh it off. The way she'd dismiss my feelings as insecurities. The way she never really apologized, she just doubled down. And now, here she was setting off on a trip with another man days before our wedding because she thought I wouldn't dare stop her. And maybe she was right. At that moment, I didn't stop her. I watched her pack sunscreen, new bikinis, that short white sundress she said was only for me. She laughed and kissed me on the cheek like I was just an accessory in her story. Then she left. 5 days, just her and Leo. She didn't call much, said the signal was spotty. She sent me one photo of her on a balcony, smiling at sunset, glass of wine in hand. But I saw the reflection in the window behind her. 2 wine glasses, a man's arm, and her hair tossed back in laughter. I didn't reply. I just stared at that photo for what felt like hours. Then I saved it. The night she left the apartment felt hollow. It was strange how someone could take their energy with them when they walked out the door. Ava had always filled a room with her perfume, her laughter, the way she draped herself across furniture like a queen on a throne. Now the silence stretched through every corner like fog. I didn't blast music. I didn't go out with friends. I sat in that quiet, and I thought. I scrolled through old messages, old pictures of us. I tried to remind myself why I'd proposed, why I'd been so sure. But every scroll, every swipe was a reminder of how often I'd swallowed my instincts, of how many times I'd told myself I was overthinking when she gave me reasons not to trust her. The thing about Leo is, he never did anything directly. He never crossed a line in front of me. But I wasn't stupid. The way he looked at her when she wasn't paying attention. The subtle digs when I talked about her work as if to say she could have done better. The way he touched her lower back when they said goodbye, just barely long enough to make my skin crawl. And Ava let it happen, Worse, sometimes she seemed to enjoy making me squirm. Now she was with him, alone, at the beach, while I was here trying not to lose my mind. I tried not to check her social media. I failed. On the second day, she posted a boomerang, her laughing as ocean spray hit her face. The caption, exactly what I needed. Nush her mental reset. Aja pre-wedding vibes. She didn't tag him. But in the reflection of her sunglasses, I saw Leo's smirk. Then came a group of photos. Her in a hammock sipping a cocktail. Her in a bikini on the sand. Her jumping into a pool. And one blurry picture of her dancing at night with a man's silhouette behind her. It didn't take a genius to guess who it was. The likes rolled in. Comments from her friends. You look amazing. Deserve this break, girl. Leo takes the best pics. That last one hit like a punch. They all knew. This wasn't just her being carefree, it was a performance. And I was the fool in the audience watching it all unfold. I didn't sleep that night either. Instead, I poured a drink and sat in the dark, phone in hand. My thumb hovered over her contact over Leo's, over our wedding planner's number, over my mom's. I didn't call anyone. I just watched that slideshow of disrespect keep playing in my mind. And then I remembered something Ava had once said during an argument. We were fighting about something small, probably me getting upset she spent the weekend with Leo and didn't tell me until the night before. She'd said, if you don't trust me, maybe you're not strong enough for a woman like me. At the time, I thought she meant independence. Now I saw it for what it was, manipulation dressed in empowerment. She didn't want partnership. She wanted control, the ability to do whatever she wanted without consequence. And she wanted me silent, loyal, and obedient. A man who wouldn't challenge her even as she danced at the edge of betrayal. The next morning, I woke up early, sat on the balcony, watched the sky shift from pale gray to pink to light blue, and something in me shifted too. For the first time since she left, I stopped wondering what she was doing, and started asking myself what I was allowing. I'd spent years trying to be the man who understood, who didn't get jealous, who played it cool even when something twisted in my gut. But this wasn't about jealousy anymore. This was about dignity. And if Ava didn't know the difference, then maybe she wasn't the one. I didn't come to that conclusion in a dramatic flash. It was slow, quiet, like exhaling after holding your breath too long, a steady unraveling of illusion. By the time she came back, I already knew, but I said nothing. I just watched her walk through the door, drop her bags, and stretch like a cat who'd had the most relaxing time of her life. Miss me? She asked, grinning. I smiled faintly. Of course. She walked over, kissed me lightly. I didn't kiss her back fully. I don't think she even noticed. She launched into stories about the trip, the seafood, the weather, how they got lost one night, and ended up making a fire on the beach. She laughed so easily, like none of it was strange, like none of it mattered, and maybe to her it didn't, but to me, it was everything. I watched her as she talked, and all I saw was a stranger wearing the face of the woman I thought I loved. I used to believe trust was something you built over time through small gestures, through loyalty, through silence during storms. But the truth is, trust dies in seconds. It bleeds out the moment someone looks you in the eye, and lies without flinching. The week after Ava returned, everything on the surface looked normal. She went back to work. She texted me midday like she used to. How's your morning? Want sushi tonight? We need to finalize the seating chart. She acted like she'd just returned from a yoga retreat. Rejuvenated, relaxed, unaffected, but something had cracked in me. I wasn't reacting the same way. I wasn't reaching for her hand while watching TV. I wasn't asking questions about her day. I was watching and waiting. One night, I opened her laptop. We never had passwords between us, not because we were some picture-perfect couple, but because she always said I have nothing to hide. Well, that turned out to be a performance. There in her downloads folder were 3 hidden zip files, labeled with random letters, encrypted but not locked. I opened one. Dozens of photos spilled out, not the ones from Instagram, not the ones she'd shown me on her phone with giggles and filters. No, these were raw, candid, private, photos Leo had taken, or maybe she had. Her in a towel on the beach house balcony, her laughing in a kitchen hair wet wearing his hoodie, her asleep on a couch, his arm across her waist, a selfie of the two of them nose-to-nose, heads pressed together, his hand holding her face in that way that isn't friendly. My hands were cold. It wasn't just what I saw, it was what it confirmed. I'd always felt like Ava was capable of pushing limits, flirting with the edge, daring you to flinch first. But This, this was more than a dare. It was a declaration. And in that moment, something in me snapped. But I didn't yell. I didn't confront her. I didn't smash a glass or storm out of the apartment. No. I sat quietly, closed the folder, and transferred a few photos to my phone. Then I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, looked in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't recognize the man staring back. I'd spent so much time making excuses for her, so much energy justifying why I felt too sensitive or too suspicious. But it wasn't suspicion, it was instinct, and I'd been silencing it for years. That night, I lay beside her and stared at the ceiling. She curled against me like nothing had happened, like her 5-day affair didn't exist because I hadn't officially caught her in the act. To her, silence meant forgiveness. To me, silence was the sound of goodbye forming slowly in the back of my throat. The next morning over breakfast, I asked, "Do you think Leo's in love with you?" She blinked, then smiled faintly. "Jason, that's not a fair question. So you don't know he's just affectionate. You know how he is. And what about you?" She leaned back, sipping her coffee. "I love you. I'm marrying you. So why are we even talking about this?" She was right. Why were we talking about this? Because she wanted to pretend that loyalty was about who you marry, not how you treat someone when they're not watching. I didn't respond. I just got up, put my plate in the sink, and said I had to get to work early. The truth, I didn't go to work. I drove to the lake, sat in the car for 2 hours, watching the still water. My phone buzzed once, her asking if I wanted Vietnamese or Indian for dinner. I didn't answer. That night, while she was in the shower, I pulled out a small box from the back of my closet. Inside the engagement ring I had planned to wear on the day I said I do. It felt heavy now, like a shackle. I looked at it one last time, then I placed it on the dresser and walked out of the room. If you were in this situation, would you forgive or take revenge? Comment below to let us know. I didn't leave that night, not yet. I wasn't done watching, not done listening. I needed to see what she would do when the foundation beneath her started to crack. The next morning, I noticed she didn't mention the ring on the dresser. She probably thought I'd taken it off temporarily. Maybe I'd had a bad dream. Maybe I was being emotional. She didn't ask. She just pretended it wasn't there. Ava was good at that pretending. I waited 2 more days. 2 more days of her planning flower arrangements. 2 more days of her acting like everything was exactly how it should be. 2 more days of her laughing on the phone with bridesmaids, using words like forever and soulmate like they meant something. And then I confronted her. We were having dinner Thai takeout, the kind she liked. She was sipping her wine and talking about wedding favors, something about custom monogrammed cookies. I watched her talk. Her mouth moved, but I didn't hear the words. When she paused to take another bite, I asked, "Were you ever going to tell me?" She blinked. "Tell you what? That the trip wasn't innocent, that it wasn't just you and a friend catching up, that you stayed in the same bed, that you let him touch you." Her face changed just slightly, not shock, not guilt, just calculation. She set her fork down, wiped her lips slowly with a napkin, then leaned back in her chair. "Jason, what exactly are you accusing me of?" "You know what I'm accusing you of." She tilted her head like I was being dramatic. "I needed time away. Leo and I have been close for years. You knew that when you proposed. I also thought I was proposing to someone who respected boundaries." She scoffed. "So what now? I'm the villain because I took a trip before our wedding. That's pathetic." I leaned forward. I saw the photos, Ava, the ones you didn't post, the ones with his hands on you, the ones where you were wrapped in his clothes like you belonged to him. Her eyes narrowed, lips tightening. Then instead of apologizing, instead of explaining, she smiled. A slow, cruel little smile that made my blood go cold. "And you're still here," she said. I stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means I knew you wouldn't leave. You don't have it in you. You love me too much. You're too soft." She said it like it was a compliment, like she was proud of me for enduring her betrayal. "I tested you, Jason, and guess what? You passed." There it was. The truth, naked and disgusting. She tested me, like a scientist poking a lab rat to see how much pain it could take before it squealed. I pushed my chair back and stood up slowly. "You think this is love? I think love is knowing the other person won't leave when things get complicated." "Complicated," I laughed once, bitter and sharp. "You planned a vacation affair and then came back expecting a wedding. That's not complicated, that's cruel." She rolled her eyes. You're being emotional. You always do this when you can't control something. There it was again, flipping the blame, spinning the narrative. She wasn't guilty. I was emotional. You're not sorry, I said, voice low. I'm not wrong, she said, matching my tone. We stared at each other across the table. This wasn't a fight. This was a final unveiling, a peeling back of every layer we had ever built together. You don't love me, I said. I love being loved, she replied, and that was the truest thing she had ever said. I didn't say another word. I walked past her, went into the bedroom, and grabbed the duffel bag I'd packed earlier, just the essentials. She didn't follow me. When I reached the door, I paused. You were right, I said. I didn't leave because I was soft. I stayed because I believed you'd be worth fighting for. I turned the knob, but I don't believe that anymore. And I walked out. I left the wedding behind. I left the tuxedo, the catering deposit, the guest list. I left the man I'd been trying to become, the one who bent to keep the peace. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. No goodbye notes, no explanations, just silence. And freedom. I didn't go far. Just a cabin on the edge of a lake I used to visit with my father as a kid. No Wi-Fi, spotty signal, no people asking questions, just time and silence. At first the silence was unbearable. When you're with someone like Ava long enough, even chaos becomes comfort. The sound of her voice, her commands, her corrections, they filled the space, told me who I was. Without it, I felt weightless, not free, not yet, just floating in the absence of her. The first 2 days I barely ate. I didn't shave, didn't open my laptop. I sat outside in a hoodie with a blanket wrapped around me, just staring at the still water, and I let the memories come. The first time I saw her in that red blazer at a friend's launch party, laughing too loudly, drinking whiskey while everyone else held wine. She was magnetic. The first time we fought over something stupid. I forgot her birthday gift. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. The first time she cried in front of me over her father, who had left when she was 8. I held her that night like she was made of glass. The first time I noticed how she used pain not to connect, but to control. She knew how to turn vulnerability into a weapon, how to disarm people by letting them see just enough of her brokenness to feel responsible for it. And I bought in like a fool with a bleeding heart. I kept thinking maybe if I loved her harder, more gently, more patiently, maybe she'd feel safe enough to stop testing me. But the truth is, people like Ava don't want safety. They want control. They want to be adored without condition, without accountability. And I had given her exactly that, until I didn't. By the 3rd day, I felt different. Not better, not stronger, just settled, like a storm had passed, and now all that remained was wreckage and a question. What? Now I knew what I wasn't going to do. I wasn't going to text her. I wasn't going to post anything online. I wasn't going to give her the drama she craved, the screaming, the begging, the dramatic showdown. No. She wanted attention. I would give her silence. Because silence, I realized, is louder than rage. She had expected fury, expected me to blow up, to embarrass myself, to beg for honesty. But I was done begging. On the 4th day, I turned my phone on, dozens of messages, some from her, some from friends, some from her mother. Where are you, Jason? This isn't funny. You're acting like a child. Call me. Let's talk like adults. You're throwing away everything. Please come home. I didn't reply to any of them. And then there was one voice memo from her. I hesitated before pressing play. Her voice was calm, calculated. Jason, you leaving like that wasn't just immature, it was cowardly. You're proving exactly what I feared, that when things get hard, you run. You think you're punishing me, but you're just showing everyone who you really are. I suggest you come back before people start asking questions you can't answer. I played it twice, and then I deleted it. Not because I was afraid of the questions, but because her voice no longer had power over me. That night I wrote a letter, not to her, to myself, a simple one. You were loyal, you were honest, you tried, you gave her the best parts of you, and she used them to test how far you'd break. You didn't break, you walked away, and that is strength. I folded the letter, tucked it into my wallet, and for the first time in weeks I slept through the night. No dreams, no Ava, just quiet. I remember the exact weight of that ring in my pocket. It wasn't just metal, it was pressure, expectation, the symbol of a future that no longer existed, at least not the one I had once fought for. The morning I left the cabin, I didn't pack everything, just enough to keep moving. I still didn't know where I was going, just that I wasn't going back. Not to her, not to that apartment, not to that version of myself. As I drove through the winding hills and back toward the city, the ring shifted slightly in my coat pocket with every bump in the road. A tiny sound, but I felt it in my chest. My phone buzzed non-stop. I didn't check it. Ava had gone from confused to furious to, now I assumed, desperate. Or maybe not. Maybe she was still convinced that she had control, that I was just taking a dramatic break cooling off and I'd come crawling back once I got it out of my system. She still didn't understand. This wasn't a tantrum, it was a departure. I pulled into my friend Marcus's driveway late that afternoon. He was one of the few people who had seen the cracks in my relationship before I was willing to admit they were real. He never said I told you so, but the way he opened the door said it for him. "Come on in," he said, simply stepping aside. The second I stepped into his living room, the emotions hit me harder than they had in the woods. Because here in the city, back in reality, everything felt louder, more real. I wasn't hiding anymore. I had left, and the world hadn't ended. We sat on his porch that night, 2 beers between us. I didn't tell him everything. I didn't need to. He already knew. "She cheated," I finally said aloud. It was the first time I'd spoken the words out loud. He didn't flinch. "Yeah," he said. "And she made sure you'd blame yourself for reacting." That part stung the most. Not just that she'd betrayed me, but that she'd made me feel like the problem for not swallowing it. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the ring, held it between my fingers, feeling the cold weight of it one last time. "I was going to give this to her the night before the wedding," I said, in private. "No photographers, just her and me. I had this whole speech planned. What are you going to do with it?" "Now?" he asked. I turned it over in my hand. "I don't know. Maybe pawn it. Maybe throw it in the river. Maybe keep it as a reminder." Of what I looked at him, that I almost gave my entire life to someone who thought loyalty was a weakness. We didn't speak for a while after that. I just listened to the hum of the city. Eventually I slept on his couch. That night I didn't dream about her. I dreamed about myself, but not the man she tried to mold, the man I was before her. The next morning I turned on my phone. She had sent 14 messages, 3 voice notes, 2 missed calls from her mother, and 1 from her maid of honor, a woman I'd never particularly liked, who now called me a disgrace and an immature little boy who didn't deserve Ava in the first place. I read that message twice, then laughed. It was exactly what Ava wanted, a guilt parade marching into my inbox. She had lost control, and now she needed others to pressure me back into her orbit, but I wasn't orbiting anymore. That afternoon I went back to our apartment. She wasn't there. The place looked untouched since the last time I'd seen it. Her perfume still lingered in the air, a sickening floral sweetness that made my stomach turn. I moved through the space quickly, packed my things with precision clothes, files the few mementos I cared about. Everything else could burn for all I cared. I left the key on the counter. Then I did one final thing. I placed the ring, the one I had once imagined putting on her finger, with trembling hands in a small velvet box, sealed it, and left it on her dresser. No note, no explanation, just silence. When she came home, I imagined she walked into the apartment expecting me to be waiting, maybe with tears, maybe with accusations, maybe ready to forgive. Instead, she'd find only absence, and the ring she thought I'd never be strong enough to take back. I left that place feeling lighter than I had in months. Later that night, she finally called again. I let it go to voicemail. "Jason, I saw the box. I didn't think you'd actually walk away. I thought you were better than this. You're making a huge mistake. You're throwing away years over a misunderstanding. Leo was just a friend. He is just a friend. Please, don't do this. Don't let your pride ruin something that could have been perfect. It could have been perfect." That was her story. That I was the one who ruined things by not accepting her betrayal as a test of love. She didn't know that it wasn't pride driving me away. It was dignity. She never called again after that night. I suppose it finally dawned on her that I wasn't bluffing, and for the first time in a long, long time I felt like myself again. Not the accessory to her story, but the author of my own. It took exactly 2 days of silence before Ava's confidence began to unravel. On day 1, she still thought I'd come back, that I was just being dramatic, cooling off somewhere, waiting for the right apology to come crawling back to. She probably imagined I'd show up at her door with sad eyes, asking if we could still make the wedding work. By day 2, she realized that silence wasn't my temper, it was my decision. That's when the panic began. The calls doubled. She left 6 voicemails in one night, one angry, one defensive, one pretending nothing happened, one crying, one where she called me by every pet name she used to use, one where she whispered, "Please, Jason, please don't leave me like this." Then came the messages to mutual friends. She told them I'd had a meltdown, that I ran off because of cold feet, and that I'd been under too much pressure. Some of them reached out concerned, others subtly accused me. "Hey man, I heard what happened. Just wanted to say I hope you're okay. Ava's pretty torn up. Dude, you just disappeared. That's not cool. At least tell her what's going on." I didn't respond to any of them. I knew what she was doing. She was shaping the narrative, casting herself as the victim, me as the runaway groom. A man too emotionally unstable to handle the pressure of commitment. She was clever like that. Even in loss, she wanted to win the story. What she didn't expect was that I was done playing along. I stayed quiet, not because I was afraid, but because I had nothing left to prove. If they really knew me, they'd ask for both sides. If they didn't, well, then they never saw me anyway. On the 5th day after I left, she showed up at Marcus's door. I was sitting in the living room reading when I heard her voice through the security camera. "Jason, I know you're in there. I just want to talk." Marcus looked at me. I gave him a small nod. He opened the door and stepped outside, shutting it behind him. I heard muffled voices, her tone rising and falling in waves, desperate, frustrated, manipulative. I knew those patterns well. He said very little in return. Eventually, she left. He came back inside holding a small envelope. "She gave me this to give to you," he said, offering it. "You want it?" I stared at it for a moment, then shook my head. "Burn it," I said. He didn't ask twice, just nodded and threw it in the fireplace. That was the moment she began to lose control entirely. She started texting old photos of us, long paragraphs about how much we'd built together, how many dreams we'd shared. She pulled out every memory she could weaponize: the day we signed the lease on our apartment, the time I stayed up with her through her mother's surgery, the playlist we made for our honeymoon. It was all carefully designed not to win me back, but to weaken me, to make me question myself, to make me doubt the line I had drawn. But it was too late for that, because for the first time I saw it all clearly. The photos she sent, I didn't feel warmth. I felt the weight of every moment where I was giving and she was taking. The playlist, a soundtrack to a lie. The memories, highlights of a show where I played the loyal sidekick. One night she texted, "You're going to regret this. One day you'll realize you let go of someone who truly loved you." And for a moment, a small, sharp moment, I nearly replied. But I didn't, because I knew the truth. She loved the way I loved her, not me. The difference was everything. What came next was expected. She went public. 2 days later, she posted on Instagram a long, heartfelt caption with a black and white photo of her sitting alone at a cafe. She wore sunglasses and looked tragically beautiful. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes people run from what's real because they're scared. I've always believed in forgiveness and growth and understanding. But you can't force someone to love you the way you love them. I'll always cherish what we had. Please respect our privacy during this time. The comments flooded in. "You're so strong. He didn't deserve you. Some men just can't handle a queen." Again, I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because people like Ava never told the full story. And silence. Silence made them wonder. 1 week later, I got a message from someone I never expected, Leo. The very man who was part of this collapse. It was short, almost smug. Didn't mean to cause drama. Hope you two figure things out. I stared at that message for a while. Then I replied for the first time to anyone. "You didn't cause drama. You just confirmed the truth." 10 minutes later, another message came in from him, longer this time. More defensive, rambling. He started saying things like nothing happened and you're blowing it out of proportion, and Ava was the one who invited me. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just smug, he was nervous, because in my silence he saw something he didn't expect: consequences. And men like Leo who thrive in shadows and implications, they fear consequences more than anything. I didn't respond again. Instead, I screenshotted both messages, not for revenge, for documentation, because truth when left alone has a way of rotting. But truth when shown to light speaks for itself. And I knew that moment was coming, but I'd wait, let them both sweat, let her try to salvage her public image, let him try to wriggle free of guilt, while I built something they couldn't touch: peace, not revenge, not chaos. just a life that didn't include them anymore, watching someone unravel without lifting a single finger. It's not satisfying at first. It's unnerving. You think it will feel like victory that moment when the one who wronged you begins to fall apart. You expect your heart to pump with justice, with pride. But when I saw it happening to Ava, it wasn't pride I felt. It was clarity. She was never as invincible as she acted, and her world had been built on a fragile lie that everyone would always believe her version first. But eventually, even the most skilled actors lose the crowd. The first sign of cracks came through friends. People I hadn't heard from in weeks suddenly messaged me. "Hey man, I know you're probably overwhelmed, but can I ask what really happened? I didn't want to believe the rumors, but I heard some things about Ava and Leo. If you need to talk, I'm here." They weren't messages of support, not entirely. They were curiosity dressed as concern, but I welcomed them anyway, because they proved what I'd known all along. Ava's version of the story was slipping. One friend, Sarah, who had known Ava for years, finally called me. "I'm not picking sides," she began. "Sure," I said flatly. Something felt off. She said you bailed because you were insecure, that you couldn't handle her having male friends. But then she slipped and said Leo stayed in her room. There was a pause. "Stayed," I repeated. "Yeah." Like it was normal, like it was a joke, but it wasn't funny, it was just weird. And then when I asked again, she changed the subject. "I don't know. She's not acting right." I didn't feed the gossip, and I didn't confirm or deny. All I said was, people show you who they are eventually. I just chose to see it late. And with that, the seeds were planted, whispers began. The curated tragic heroine she tried to portray on social media began to clash with the cold glimpses that leaked from real conversations. Someone asked why she canceled the wedding venue last minute. Someone else saw Leo leaving her apartment early one morning. Another caught her in a lie claiming she hadn't seen Leo in weeks when a tagged photo said otherwise. One friend posted a passive-aggressive quote online, "Funny how some people ruin their own happiness and then blame everyone else for the fallout." She deleted it an hour later, but by then it had already been screenshotted and circulated. I didn't post anything. I didn't defend myself online, but I wasn't hiding either. I started going out again to the gym, to coffee shops, even back to the office a few times. And when I bumped into someone who used to be in Ava's circle, I didn't flinch. I looked them straight in the eye, calm, unshaken. That alone was enough to shift opinions, because when someone's truly guilty, they either rage or disappear. But I did neither. I simply existed unbothered, and in this twisted game of perception, that was the most damning thing of all. Meanwhile, Ava tried everything to hold it together. She posted more often, inspirational quotes about healing, pictures of her smiling with captions like "new beginnings," long drawn-out posts about self-love and empowerment, but her eyes, even through filters I could see it. She looked tired. The performance was exhausting her. The wedding was officially called off now. Vendors were canceling. Her family, who had invested money and pride into the big event, began asking questions. Her mother reached out to mine. "I don't know what Jason's thinking," she said. "Ava's heartbroken. He just vanished." My mother, who had remained quiet all this time, responded with only one sentence. If Ava was really heartbroken, she would have stopped breaking him long before he left. That reply made its rounds, too. I didn't know she had it in her, but part of me smiled. Even people who had once doubted me were starting to see now. Not because I shouted the truth, but because I never stooped to their level. And that's when the final domino fell. Ava posted an apology. Not to me, not directly, but to her audience, her followers, her image, her idea of herself. "I've made mistakes. I let good things slip away. I pushed people who love me too far. I'm still learning. I hope one day I'll be forgiven even if I haven't earned it yet." There it was. Not an admission, but an indirect confession. And people knew. Some praised her for accountability. Others saw through it instantly. Too little, too late. He dodged a bullet. Wonder what Jason's side of the story is. I didn't comment. I didn't message her. I didn't so much as like the post, because some people need silence to hear how loud they've become. One night, Marcus and I were having drinks on his balcony when he asked me, "You think she regrets it?" I thought for a second, then answered honestly, "No, she regrets losing control, not losing me." And that was the difference, because if she had really valued what we had, she would have fought for it before the betrayal, not after she got caught. Now, she was just scrambling to fix a reputation, not a relationship, and I wasn't interested in either. I should have blocked Leo from the start, but part of me was curious like a detective who walks through a burned building not for evidence but for closure. So when the message came in from him late one night, a DM on Instagram of all things, I stared at it for a long time before opening it. It read, "Yo, I know things got messed up. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Ava told me you were cool with the trip. Thought you two had an open thing going or something. Hope you're good, man." I stared at those words like they were written in another language. Cool with the trip open thing. He was trying to soften it, rewrite history, twist it just enough to avoid responsibility, while still pretending to extend an olive branch. I didn't respond immediately. I didn't rage or type a long rant. I just let the words sink in and watched what it did to me. Nothing. That was the surprising part. I felt nothing. No heat in my chest, no shaking hands, no boiling anger. Just a cold, clear understanding that Leo wasn't sorry he was scared. Not of me, not even of Ava, but of the truth that had started to circulate. His ego depended on being the charming outsider, the friend who was harmless. And now that his image was compromised, he was scrambling. He wasn't here to apologize. He was trying to manage the fallout. I finally replied short and clean. "If you thought I was cool with you sleeping in her bed, then you're dumber than I thought." He left me on scene for 5 hours. Then another message came through. Nothing happened. Seriously, we were drunk one night, yeah, but it wasn't like that. Ava was venting about you. Said you were cold, disconnected. I was just trying to be a friend. Now he was shifting blame. She talked about me. I was cold. I was distant. He was just being there for her. I'd seen this playbook before. When Ava didn't get her way, she painted herself as neglected. And when people saw cracks in her partner, they were more likely to excuse the way she slipped through them. Leo had been drawn into her gravity, and he didn't realize, until too late, that he wasn't the sun. He was a moon. She used to reflect light in the direction she wanted. I debated responding again, but what more was there to say? So I typed the truth. "I'm not mad at you, Leo. I expected better from her. You were always just waiting for your turn." He left me on read, didn't reply for 2 days. Then unexpectedly, a long message came in. Multiple paragraphs. "Look, I guess I deserved that. I always did have feelings for her, yeah, but I backed off when you two got serious. I never tried to mess things up. This whole trip thing, it was her idea. She said you were fine with it. She said it was just for her to breathe. And yeah, I was weak. I didn't stop it, but I didn't mean for it to turn into this. I didn't care. Not anymore. The details didn't matter. The justifications didn't matter. The timeline, the alcohol, the intentions, none of it would change the truth. He could have said no. She could have chosen respect. Neither did. And now they were both just flailing in the ashes, trying to explain to the world why the fire wasn't their fault. I screenshotted the entire thread, not to expose him, not yet, but because people like Leo are slippery and I wanted proof. Proof for the day someone tried to paint me as irrational. Proof for the day Ava spun another version. Proof for myself if ever I felt tempted to question my decision. After that, I blocked him. I was done giving him space in my mind, but his message had done something unexpected. It reopened a question I hadn't asked myself since leaving. What exactly did Ava tell him about me? Had she been slowly discrediting me to him behind my back? I can't talk to Jason. He's emotionally distant. He makes me feel trapped. It wouldn't be the first time someone used emotional language to pre-justify betrayal. A few days later, another friend reached out this time, a guy who had known both of us from college, someone who had remained neutral throughout the wedding collapse. He said, "Hey man, not sure if you care, but Leo's been telling people you were abusive, controlling, that you monitored Ava's phone and wouldn't let her have male friends." I laughed. The projection was surreal. Ava had full autonomy. She went wherever she wanted, talked to whomever she wanted, stayed out for hours without explanation. I was the one who bit my tongue every time she flirted with boundaries. But now I was the villain in their story, the overbearing fiancé who drove her into Leo's arms. Classic. But here's the thing about lies. They spread fast, but the truth has longer legs, and eventually it catches up. One night I sat at Marcus's kitchen table and said, "I think I'm going to speak." He looked up. Publicly I nodded. Not out of spite, I said. Not revenge. Just truth. He gave me a long look, then said, "When you do say it clean, no venom, Just facts. Let people choke on how calm you are. And that's exactly what I plan to do. Not to drag Ava, not to shame Leo, but to reclaim my voice, the one they tried to overwrite. Because I wasn't the jealous guy. I wasn't the unstable one. I was the man who loved someone past the point of reason and walked away the moment I saw the truth. There's a difference between revenge and revelation. I wasn't looking to ruin Ava. That would have been too easy. All I wanted was to reclaim what she tried to take from me, my voice, my integrity, my truth. So I wrote everything down, not for a viral moment, not for a headline, but because sometimes when someone distorts your story enough, you owe it to yourself to write the original. I opened a blank document and titled it simply My Side, and then I began. I didn't call names, I didn't dramatize, I didn't add fire to wounds that were already scorched. I wrote like I was talking to a younger version of myself, the man who had once swallowed every uneasy instinct just to keep the peace. The man who had given Ava the benefit of the doubt so many times his own doubts drowned. I described how she announced a 5-day beach trip with Leo, her so-called best friend, the man she used to date who still hung around like a shadow just waiting to take my place. I described how I bit my tongue, tried to be the mature fiancé, even as my stomach twisted with every new photo from her trip, filtered smiles, wine glasses, reflections, and sunglasses, laughter that didn't belong to me anymore. I described the moment I saw the hidden photos, the ones she never posted, the ones that made everything real. Her in his clothes, her in his arms, her asleep on his chest. I described how she looked me in the face and said, "You wouldn't dare leave me," and how days later I left without saying goodbye, not out of fear, but out of clarity. I explained it all, not for sympathy, but for truth. When I was done, I read it 3 times. Each time it felt lighter, cleaner. It wasn't a scream, it was a steady whisper of power. Then I posted it, not on a tabloid site, not even on a revenge blog, just a quiet post on my personal page. A few hundred followers, friends, family, colleagues. I turned off comments. I didn't need validation. I needed peace. The first few hours it was quiet. A few reactions, a few shares, some private messages, mostly silence. Then it spread. Someone reposted it in a private group. Another person copied it to their story. A friend messaged me saying, "Dude, this is making the rounds." By the next day, I had messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were short. I always knew something was off about her. "This explains everything. Proud of you." Some were long. Reading that made me rethink the way I've let people rewrite my story. Thank you for putting this out there. You said what a lot of us couldn't. And then Ava messaged me. Of course she did. At first just a single line. "Really, Jason," I didn't reply. Then came a longer one. "You had no right to put our private issues out there. That was cruel. You embarrassed me. You're no better than the people you claim hurt you." I stared at it, and I smiled, because that was the difference between her and me. She thought silence was shame. I knew silence had protected her long enough. I replied one last time. "I didn't name you. I didn't insult you. I didn't lie. I just told the truth. If that embarrassed you, maybe it's not my words you're ashamed of." She never responded after that. In the following weeks, things changed. I didn't just regain my voice. I felt something more dangerous return: self-respect. I stopped explaining myself to people who had only ever wanted pieces of me. I stopped apologizing for making boundaries, and I started living, not moving on, not healing like some Instagram quote, just living as myself unedited. I moved into a smaller place, just a 1-bedroom, but it was mine. Clean walls, no memories, no ghosts. I redecorated without needing someone else's opinion. I bought the espresso machine I always wanted. I took long walks in the morning. I read books without checking my phone for her texts. I started laughing again, not the polite, forced kind I used to do when Ava said something cruel in public and I had to pretend it was a joke. I mean, real laughter. And eventually, I started dating again. Slowly, carefully, not out of loneliness, but because I wanted to see if connection could feel honest again. It did. Not perfectly, not like a movie, but real. I remember one night I was sitting on a rooftop with someone new. We were watching the city lights. She asked me, "Have you ever had your heart broken?" And I didn't hesitate. "Yeah," I said. But it wasn't the heartbreak that hurt most. It was realizing how long I stayed after I knew I was being broken. She didn't pity me. She just nodded. That was enough. Months passed. One day, I ran into a mutual friend, someone who had once been in Ava's corner. He looked at me, then looked away, then finally said, "You were right." That was it. 3 words, and I didn't need more. Because truth doesn't shout, it waits, and eventually it's undeniable. Her apology didn't come in the form of a grand gesture. There were no flowers, no dramatic doorstep confrontation in the rain, no handwritten letter on my windshield, just a notification. An email sent at 3:14 a.m., the kind of hour when guilt gets loud and sleep runs away. The subject line was one word, sorry. I hovered over it for a few minutes before opening it. Inside was a long paragraph. No greeting, no emojis, no scattered punctuation like her usual messages. This one was composed clean, practiced like she'd written and rewritten it 10 times before hitting send. "I've read your post. I've seen what people are saying. I didn't think you'd go that far, but maybe I deserved it. Maybe I pushed too hard and assumed too much. You weren't perfect, Jason, but I know I hurt you. I know I crossed lines. I never meant for things to get so twisted. I thought I was just protecting myself, but maybe I was just afraid. Afraid you'd leave if you saw the real me. I hope one day you'll understand that I never meant to lose you." I read it 3 times, not because I was moved, but because I wanted to be sure to really absorb every word. And the strangest thing happened as I did. I felt nothing. Not forgiveness, not rage, not sadness, just stillness. She said she didn't mean to lose me, but every action she took said otherwise. The trip, the way she dismissed my pain, the gaslighting, the silence when I disappeared. If that's not choosing to lose someone, then what is I didn't respond? Not immediately, not days later, not ever. She had already gotten everything from me: time, trust, the quiet benefit of the doubt. She wasn't getting closure, too. I left the email unread and archived it. Her apology wasn't for me, it was for her. A way to soothe her conscience, to prove to herself that she'd tried. But there are some bridges that don't burn, they sink, quietly, and no apology can raise them back from the depths. A week later, I bumped into her. I was walking out of a bookstore when she came around the corner, almost colliding with me. We both froze. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but spiritually. Her posture wasn't bold. Her eyes didn't scan for attention like they used to. She wore a gray hoodie and no makeup, her hair pulled back into a tired knot. "Jason," she said softly. I nodded. "Ava." A beat of silence. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she began. "I got your email," I replied. More silence. "I didn't expect you to reply," she admitted. "I didn't." Her face flickered a tiny wince she tried to hide. "I just wanted to say it to your face," she continued. "I know I messed up. I know I made you feel like you didn't matter. And I'm sorry for that. Truly." I waited, watched her. She wasn't performing now. There were no theatrics, no layered makeup, no carefully chosen words. Just rawness, and maybe finally sincerity. But it was too late. Not because I hated her, but because I'd healed without her. "You don't have to say it again," I said gently. She blinked. "You mean that I do? I've already made peace with it." She looked down, fidgeted with her sleeve. "I think about us sometimes," she admitted, "about how close we were." I nodded. We were close until we weren't. A small, sad smile crossed her face. "I hope you're happy now." "I am," I said. And for the first time, I meant it completely. She took a step back. "Well, I won't bother you again. You're not bothering me, Ava. You're just part of the past now." She nodded once. Eyes glistened, but no tears fell. Then she turned and walked away. I didn't watch her leave. I turned in the opposite direction and kept walking. Later that night, I thought about the encounter. It didn't haunt me. It felt like watching the final scene of a long movie. One that had dragged on too long. One where the villain wasn't evil, just broken, selfish, lost. I didn't forgive her to free her. I forgave her to unchain myself, because holding on to anger would have been giving her more rent-free space in my head, and I was finally ready to evict her completely. In the months that followed, things continued to settle. People stopped asking questions. Friends chose their sides, some quietly unfollowed her. Others reached out to me saying they'd had a feeling all along. I didn't gloat. I didn't say I told you so. Because healing is quiet. I got a new job, moved to a different part of the city, got back into photography, something Ava once called a waste of time. I took a solo trip to the mountains and spent 3 days with no signal, no noise, just air and space and reflection. And one day, I looked in the mirror and realized something powerful. I liked the man staring back. He was no longer apologizing for asking to be loved honestly. He wasn't afraid to walk away from what hurt him. He had loved someone deeply, and when that love was mocked, he left. And that made him strong. I used to believe heartbreak was something you healed from by replacing it. A new relationship, a new distraction, a new purpose. But that's not how it worked for me. My healing didn't come from someone else stepping in. It came in quiet mornings where I made coffee alone and didn't feel hollow. It came in walking past places that used to sting and realizing I no longer flinched. It came from not needing a witness to my growth. I never hated Ava, not even when the truth unfolded, not when she twisted the story, not when she used her apology as a shield from consequence. Because what I felt wasn't hatred, it was grief. Grief for the version of myself that stayed too long. Grief for the man who thought loyalty would buy him respect. Grief for a future I had planned with someone who had no intention of building it with me, but I don't live in that grief anymore. Now I live in something better. Peace, a kind of peace that doesn't come from winning or getting even, but from walking away fully intact, knowing I didn't become the thing that broke me. A few months ago, I ran into an old friend from our shared circle. She looked surprised to see me. "You look different," she said. "Better," I asked, smiling. She nodded. "You look like you're finally breathing again." And I was. Because when you stop pretending to be okay, when you let the silence settle, when you sit in the wreckage long enough, you learn what you're truly made of. Not bitterness, not weakness, but truth. And truth is heavy, but it's also freeing. There are days I still think about it, not often, just flickers. The way Ava used to laugh when she thought she'd won. The way she dismissed the word respect like it was optional. The way she once said, "You wouldn't dare leave." She said it because she believed it, because I had trained her unintentionally to believe I would stay through anything. That love meant endurance. But real love doesn't test you like that. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink. Real love doesn't measure your worth by how much pain you can absorb without breaking. And when I finally understood that, I set myself free. Today, my life is quieter. There's no wedding album on my shelf, no shared playlists, no ring box hidden in a drawer. But there is clarity. There is a man who wakes up every day and knows he didn't fail, he chose himself. There is laughter again, and rest, and ease. And sometimes when I walk past couples on the street hand in hand, I smile. Not with jealousy, but with hope. Because I know what I won't accept again. And I know that next time, if there is a next time, I'll walk into love not trying to prove anything, but simply to share everything. And if that's too much for someone, then they're not enough for me. So if you're reading this, maybe wondering if you're overreacting, if your pain is just insecurity, if you're being too sensitive, let me tell you, you're not. Your instincts are valid. Your boundaries are sacred. Your silence is powerful. You don't owe anyone your peace just to keep them comfortable. You deserve a love that doesn't gamble with your dignity. And if someone ever dares to look you in the eye and say, "You wouldn't dare leave me," I hope you prove them wrong. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been through something like this, if you've ever walked away or wanted to but couldn't, you're not alone. We're building a space here for truth, resilience, and redemption. So tell me in the comments, have you ever stayed longer than you should have? Or did you leave before it broke you? I want to hear your story. And if this spoke to you, comment and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to Ethan's Way for more stories that reveal what we hide and what we learn when we stop hiding.